Welcome, and thank you very much, Madam. Thank you. And then for most of you, you know our chairman, he was there last time. And then, of course, also, we have here Sitembe Koza. Can you please stand up, my dear Lord, so they can see you? You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, we're going to call upon our chairman to open these proceedings for us. Chairman, yes? You want to do it from there? Okay, please come and do it. I want those cameras to get all of you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. It is an important morning where we talk to the rest of the country about Eskom matters. I would like to thank Brian Malife, our acting chief executive. It's his 61st day at his job today, and he has done a sterling job. I would like also to thank our group executives, our Eskom engineers, our Eskom station managers, and all our employees for the excellent work they're doing to keep the lights on for South Africa. And therefore, I would like to call upon Brian to brief you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Board members who are here, members of the executive team, Eskom employees, and members from the media. The presentation will briefly cover on half-yearly performance, mainly of generation, the winter outlook, the build program. I think it is important to point out that even when we have load shedding, we are able to provide electricity to 96% of the country. And this is what we have done in the first quarter, in the first half of the year, that 96% of the time, at least 96% of the time, electricity was available. What we are going to try and do differently now is to do maintenance with no or minimal load shedding. And this is a new strategy that we are adopting and that I will go into in a little while. We still have an aging and volatile plant that contributes to a lot of the unknowns in our daily operations. The cold weather has increased demand. Today we have another cold front hitting us for the next 3 days. And maintenance has also put strain on an already strained system, which is already under pressure. We will perform during winter about 5,500 megawatts of planned maintenance. At any one point in time, we will have about 5,500 megawatts out for maintenance. And this is 3 times more maintenance than we have done in the previous winters. So typically in winter, Eskom would limit the maintenance that we do because of the pressure on the system. But at the moment, we're doing about 5,500 megawatts, which is about 3 times what we've ever done during a winter period. And we're going to continue with this right through to the end of winter. We're making every effort to reduce plant breakdowns, which is unplanned maintenance, so that we can allow for more planned maintenance. And Medupi Unit 6 is on track to being commissioned and coming into commercial operation by the end of August. And at the moment, we are getting about 800 megawatts from Medupi on the grid. It is now and again gets switched off for testing and further preparations for commercialization at the end of August. But at least at the moment, it is contributing 800 megawatts to the grid. And most importantly, although there has been talk from certain quarters of a total blackout in South Africa, we are happy to announce that the prospect of a blackout in South Africa is virtually non-existent. It is not possible with what we have now and what we know today that we can say that there is a possibility of a blackout, a total blackout. It is just not existent. There is no prospect of a blackout in South Africa. We will have stage 1, maybe stage 2, and when things are really bad, maybe stage 3 load shedding, but not a total blackout, which represents a total system collapse. That is out of the question. This is how we have performed in the first half of the year. As I said earlier, 96% of the time electricity was available and was supplied even when we had stage 2 load shedding, despite during higher demand during this period compared to last year. The first half of the year, we've had more demand than we had in the last year. The generation performance has performed better than expected in the first half of the year. We actually, I think, outdone ourselves in the first half of the year, and I will show you why in a little while. Open cycle gas turbines, which is diesel, has been used extensively to prevent load shedding, or when we are in load shedding, we have used diesel to minimize the impact of load shedding. We think that diesel is very expensive, but the cost of not using diesel to minimize the impact of load shedding is much bigger to the economy than the cost that Eskom is currently incurring, and indeed the cost that we are asking the regulator to consider in passing through the cost in terms of our application. We think that the 10 billion or 12 billion that we're asking for diesel to minimize the impact of load shedding is nothing compared to the costs of not having those additional 2,000 megawatts that we get from diesel turbines. Independent power producers have come to the party and they continue to play an important role, contributing about 1,872 megawatts when the system is constrained. Renewable energy contributed about 1,300 megawatts during the day, of which 800 megawatts was from solar and about 500 megawatts from wind. This solar energy is the energy that we lost last week, the 800 megawatts, when there was a cloud cover over the Northern Cape. Incidentally, I saw yesterday in the news, in the weather reports, that there could be another cloud cover over the Northern Cape over the next 2 days. But we will wait and see how that works out, and if we are going to be able to go through this period, this cold front, without load shedding. The build program continues to contribute positively to the grid. We have already put in 100 megawatts from Sere, the wind farm, and up to 800 megawatts from Medupi. This has come from the build program. The build program is our ticket out of load shedding, because when the build program bears fruit and we're able to deliver what we actually were supposed to have delivered by now from Kusile and Medupi, it should be possible to have excess capacity to allow us to do more maintenance without load shedding. This picture shows the amount of load shedding that has happened between April 2014 to April 2015 relative to the amount of times that electricity was available. So if you look at the green, that is the time when electricity was available to South Africa in between April 2014 and April 2015, and the red is the time when we had some load shedding and the availability of capacity. As you can see, that picture is more green than it is red, although our psyche as South Africans is to focus more on the red part. The red part should not be there, I agree, but it is not as if the red part is about to take over completely our electricity operations in South Africa, the unavailability of electricity. In January 2015, Eskom made a projection for the next 6 months, from January, or 5 months rather, from January to May, about the times when we would have load shedding. In fact, the red parts indicate what we said would be times when there would be insufficient generation capacity, which would have been unable to meet demand and reserves. And this is what the picture that was presented to yourselves, to the media, as well as to the country as a projection for the next 5 months. In fact, as a result of this, a lot of speculation was made, and a lot of applications were set up to predict maintenance schedules, load shedding schedules on the basis of this schedule. But unfortunately, this is what actually happened. And the green part represents the time when, in fact, we did not have any load shedding in the last 5 months. As you can see, we only had stage 3 load shedding in about 3 days, on the 5th of February, the 14th of April, and the 15th of April. And we had stage 1 and stage 2 load shedding, with the worst period being during May 2015, when we had quite a lot of stage 1 load shedding, typically between 5 and 10 in the evening, and we had stage 2 load shedding for several of the days. We did not have any stage 3 load shedding during May 2015. This picture is far much better than the picture that was presented in January as to what the prospects of load shedding would have been. So Eskom has indeed performed very well in making sure that electricity is available under the difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in. What's the outlook going forward? I think going forward, perhaps it is better to desist from putting up a picture there, which we are going to outperform hopelessly as we did. But safe to say that the winter of 2015 is projected to be colder than the previous winter, with a higher expected demand in electricity during peak periods. We anticipate to supply 100% of electricity most of the days, and 96% during peak periods from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. So when we do have load shedding, 96% of electricity will be available. Only 4% of the country will be affected at any one point in time. And this will be during peak periods between 6 to 10 and between 5 and 10 p.m. Most likely in winter, the period that is most affected is between 5 and 10 p.m. But we will endeavor to have about 100% availability most of the days. Even during the cold front that hit from Wednesday, the 3rd of June, Eskom only 5 hours of load shedding on Sunday, the 7th of June. And this was after 10 consecutive days of no load shedding. So we think that the strategies that we're putting in place to continue to do maintenance with minimal or no load shedding is bearing fruit, because we have seen this work in this instance for 10 consecutive days. Might I mention that since, despite the predictions of doom and gloom for the weekend by some self-proclaimed analysts and specialists, we did not have extreme load shedding over the weekend. We only had about 3 hours of stage 1 load shedding on Sunday night, and we haven't had any load shedding since. The recent load shedding from Monday the 8th of June to Friday the 12th of June was, as we said last week, as a result of an increase in demand and as a result of an increase in unplanned breakdowns. Last week was particularly cold, And we had, as I said last week in Parliament, the loss of 800 megawatts from the solar as a result of a cloud cover over the Northern Cape, and we had a breakdown in the Kahora Bassa plant, which made us lose about 1,400 megawatts. It took us time to recover from that, and as we predicted on Friday, we were already on a recovery phase. In fact, by Saturday, we did not have any load shedding. Localized power outages in urban areas, sometimes that do not have anything to do with Eskom, but as a result of breakdowns in local areas and municipalities. Illegal connections, and illegal connections generally increase during winter due to levels of customer demand, and these also cause problems to the system. And so, the outlook is we will continue to do maintenance during this winter, unprecedented maintenance, might I add, 5,500 megawatts, 3 times more than what we've ever done in winter. And at the same time, we will try to ensure that we do it in such a way that there is minimal or no load shedding. We will continue to use all available resources to minimize load shedding, independent power producers, open cycle gas turbines, which is mainly diesel, and demand management to minimize demand or reduce demand during this difficult period. Today, wind energy contributes between 300 to 500 megawatts during the day, and solar energy about 800 megawatts. Industrial customers continue to contribute an average of 10% savings, and coal stock levels at our mines are at healthy levels, except at 3 stations. The average stock level days as at the 8th of June is 50.4 days against an average target of 51.2 days. So we are not overly concerned about the availability of coal during this winter. Even at the power stations that are slightly below the coal levels that are required, we do not expect that will result in major stoppages of the provision of electricity. This is a typical profile of demand during the day. As you can see, we started about midnight, when between midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning, there is a general decrease in demand, which increases in summer up to about 30,000, in winter up to about 34,000, which is a morning peak at about 6 o'clock. And this reduces during the day and increases again in the evening to about between 35 and 36,000 megawatts, which is a winter peak from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., which is where we have most of the problems during winter. However, the peak is slightly smaller in summer, but as you can see, the relative flatness of this curve, it means that if we have a problem in the morning to meet that capacity, the problem will persist during the day, whereas in winter, the problem is only during peak periods because of the nature of the profile. This is what we intend, how we intend to implement maintenance without load shedding. Basically, 43.5 gigawatts is what is available in the system. On a summer day, peak is at about 32.5 gigawatts. On a winter day, it's about 35 gigawatts. And which, by the way, shows that we do not have a systemic problem, that we have more supply than we have demand in installed capacity. However, if I can take this winter example, we will add an additional 1,000 megawatts for reserve, which is required to operate the system smoothly. And the difference between that, the 35,000 demand and the reserve, and the total available capacity is in fact our gap to do maintenance. So as long as we do maintenance under 7 gigawatts in winter and under about 9.5 to 10 gigawatts in summer, we are able to do maintenance without load shedding. We can only increase the amount of maintenance without load shedding by reducing demand further or by increasing the capacity. As you know that we've been talking about installed capacity increasing. When that increases, that will give us more headroom to do more maintenance without load shedding. And so our target is to stay within allowable maintenance that allows us to do as much maintenance as possible without going to below what is demanded by the South African economy, which is at peak in winter about 35,000 gigawatts and 32.5 in summer. In summer, that number can come down to about 29, even 30 gigawatts, depending on the profile of the day. And that is the typical maintenance that we do. Maintenance is made up of philosophy maintenance, safety maintenance, statutory maintenance, risk maintenance, and breakdowns. The risk maintenance are the machines whose lights are red, are on, and that are saying to us they are just about to break down. And some of the breakdowns include machines that have not warned us at all about their imminent breakdown. Our focus at the moment is to reduce the number of machines that are in risk that will inevitably lead to breakdowns. And if we can have the risk units as low as possible, we will be able to minimize the UCLF, or the unplanned maintenance. And that gives us more space to do philosophy, safety, and statutory maintenance. We have an immediate solution for Majuba. And as a result of this solution, we are able to run all the station, enable the station to run all the units of 3,800 megawatts at full load. And so that has been implemented, and that is at place. Majuba's 3,800 megawatts are available. We have concluded a contract on the 2nd of March for an interim solution which replaces the mobile equipment with conveyor belts running from the permanent stockpiles to ensure greater efficiency in the coal handling process. And the construction is in progress and will be completed by the end of September 2015. A new and permanent coal handling plant is expected to be in place by the end of 2016. And the investigation into what happened in Majuba has been concluded and will be presented to the board and the shareholder soon. The Duva Unit 3 boiler, the incident that happened in March 2014, well, the boiler is out of commission because of the incident that happened in March 2014, where we lost 575 megawatts of power. The investigation has been completed as well, and the primary cause has been noted as a buildup of unbent fuel within the boiler, which ignited in an uncontrolled manner. So we were not able to, there was residual unbent fuel, which led to an unfortunate mix with air and led to an explosion, what would have been perhaps a backfiring of a car if the mixture is not correct in the carburetor. Process is underway to address the recommendations from the report, and key learnings have been shared with other power stations. Negotiations have started with a boiler supplier, and we will begin repair work in July 2015. Load shedding stages have been amended in the following way. Stage 1 is still a shortage of 1,000 megawatts. Stage 2 is still a shortage of 2,000 megawatts. However, hitherto, or before now, stage 3 was only declared when we had a shortage of 4,000 megawatts. From now on, stage 3 will be declared when we have a shortage of 3,000 megawatts and not 4,000 megawatts. This is just to reduce the gap between stage 2 and stage 3, so we can give people a sense of what is happening to the grid. So, Medupi Power Station As I said earlier, we're getting 800 megawatts from Medupi, and the first unit is on track for commercialization in August 2015, and synchronization of the second unit will happen in 2017. Kusile Power Station, the project is making good progress, and synchronization of the first unit is expected at the end of the first half of 2017, around May 2017. And Ingula Pumped Storage, synchronization of the first unit of Unit 3 has been revised to the first half of 2016. And SERE has been completed, successfully commercialized, and it is now feeding about 100 megawatts into the grid. This is just a chart that shows when the different, the build program is going to give us megawatts that are needed. As I said earlier, 800 megawatts will come in 2015 from Medupi. In January 2016, we'll get 333 megawatts from Unit 3 of Ingula. Unit 4 of Ingula will be commercialized in March 2016. And in May 2016, we'll get Unit 2 of Ingula. And Unit 1 will be commissioned in August 2016. And by September 2017, Medupi Unit 5, which will give us 800 megawatts, will be synchronized. If we get all of this capacity, you will see that our total available capacity will increase from 43.5 to about close to 50. From 43.5 maybe to about 46 or 47. And that will give us more space to do maintenance without load shedding. And that is why we say that we should expect some amount of load shedding. We're going to try and minimize it between now and 18 or 24 months until this capacity comes online. And then, as I said earlier, this capacity is in fact our ticket out of load shedding and doing maintenance without load shedding. So we will continue to keep the country informed, communicating via the national, regional, local media. Load shedding information and schedules are available on our website for Eskom customers, and national and regional spokesperson will continue to spread the message and share additional information. They will share information when we have load shedding, and they will also share information when there is no load shedding. Stakeholders and direct customers are informed predominantly via social media and text messages and power alerts on SABC and DSTV channels. Will continue to provide real-time information on the power system status and will encourage customers to take measures to save electricity so that we can minimize the pressure on the grid. And we will continue to issue power alert systems. I think at the moment we issue about 3, sometimes 4 power alerts. You will continue to get the power alerts even when there is no load shedding, so everybody can be aware of the status of the system. And we will continue with face-to-face stakeholder engagements. So this is a message that we have been repeating all over and over and over. Saving electricity reduces pressure on the grid. We can use alternatives to electrical space heating. I know that there was a big brouhaha about dressing for the weather, but it's still cheaper than switching on a heater. The national level for the grid. We encourage people to install ceiling insulation, invest in thermostatically controlled heaters, and consider gas heaters and hot water bottles to keep warm, and switch off all geysers and pool pumps during the day up to 9 p.m. Or invest in a timer for the geyser, and switch off all non-essential lighting and appliances. And most importantly, when you do see the power alerts on television about the system being under pressure, please do something to react to it, because it helps us to bring back the power. When we see demand dropping immediately, we can bring back the the grid. We can either avoid load shedding or we can switch on the lights quicker than we had planned to. So in conclusion, it's important to note that at any one point in time, we're still providing electricity to 96% of the country, and we will continue to do so in winter. The risk of load shedding in winter is likely in the peak periods, either in the morning or in the afternoon, and in the summer, in fact, when we do have load shedding in summer, it can be for periods that are during the day. We will avoid, as far as possible, having load shedding during the day, especially during the week, to avoid impact on business and economic activity. As the demand peaks in winter, we anticipate that 100% electricity supply during the day and the minimum 96% will be available in the evening, minimum. Most of the time we hope that we can provide 100% even in the evening. We'll continue with maintenance with the intent to do no or minimal load shedding. And we appreciate the support of all our customers and encourage that we maintain 100% electricity savings. We continue to be committed to provide early warning. However, at times, because of the system status, which can change rapidly, we may need to issue short notices about our actions in the power grid. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is time for questions, and the CE has with him members of the executive that will assist him in responding to questions, and some board members that are here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chose. It's now question time. We're gonna take in rounds of one round would have at least 5 people, and then we'll also have a chorus call at some point. So if I can have an indication as to who would like to be asking questions. I think I'll start this side and start with Antoinette and Jan, and then I'll also move to Terence, and then to Paul. So that will be what, 4 at the stage, and Chris Yellen, so it will be 5 at the stage.
Mr. Molefe, Antoinette Slabbert from MoneyWeb. Can you please just update us on the agreement between Eskom and Transnet about your availability at Eskom? And then with regards to your tariff application at NERSA, have you decided to proceed with it in its current form after the Treasury circular indicating that the increase, if it is granted, will only be applied in the next financial year?
Jan Lange from Beeld. Mr. Molefe, I'm not an engineer, but I've been assured by engineers at the time of the Duva incident that a build-up of unburnt fuel is the most likely cause of what happened there. And if that is the case, there are several extensive warning systems in place to prevent that from happening, which indicates that there was negligent behavior in this case, and it's going to cost us either. The figures that they've given me, it may be between 3 and 4 billion to replace that boiler. Who is going to be held accountable for this incident?
Terence. Jan, if you can pass it.
Terence, Creamer Engineering News. Just on the new strategy that you outlined today, Brian, if you could just speak to what is this blend between keeping the lights on and sustaining maintenance at the level that you are talking about. How is that communicated to your staff, and how is it not a mixed message to your staff as well as to the public? Because it seems like what gives first? Does the maintenance give first and keep the lights on, or does keep the lights on, is that the main message to the staff? And secondly, if you could just, there's a major acceleration taking place out of the IPP office in terms of renewables, as well as coal, as well as potentially gas. Are you ready to connect should that new IPP capacity come available? And if not, what do you need to be in a position to connect? Thanks.
Paul?
Yes, I think it was last week that the 1,500 megawatts from Mozambique were cut, and it's quite significant, and I'm wondering what you know of what happened at Cahora Bassa, and also what the outlook is for that, if there's any indication that that could happen in the future. Thanks.
All right, you can pass it back at Chris.
Chris Yelland from EE Publishers. Mr. Molefe, you mentioned available capacity 43.5 gigawatts, demand about 35 gigawatts, and reserves about 1.5 gigawatt, giving a gap of 7,000 gigawatt for maintenance, which includes planned and unplanned. You also said that you're going to do a minimum of 5,000 megawatts, that's 5 gigawatts throughout winter. That leaves 2 gigawatts for all other forms of maintenance, including risk maintenance and breakdowns. And we know that breakdowns have sometimes been 7,000, 8,000 megawatts, yet you've only got a 2,000 megawatt gap to do that. How are you going to avoid load shedding if there's only a 2,000 megawatt gap for unplanned breakdowns, seeing as you're doing 5,000 megawatts definitely for planned breakdowns? My second question is, can you please give us an update of the cost to completion for Medupi Power Station? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Molefe and the team, the floor is yours.
In terms of my secondment from Transnet, the agreement is that I will be here until the mid-July, and until further notice, that is the position. If there is any changes, I think the board and the minister will communicate. Tariff application. Just want to clear something about the tariff application. This is our tariff application. Our actual Our actual application is actually 6.8% on the base of what we do. And then we applied for additional money for diesel to avoid load shedding. And we were only granted about 0.1% or 1.5 billion. 1.5 billion for diesel to avoid load shedding during this period is simply not enough. 1.5 billion is what we use in 1 month. In fact, it is finished. We don't have it. The rest of the money, if we do not get the additional 10.9 billion for the rest of the year, and we switch off the gas turbines because the regulator is not allowing it, then we will go into load shedding quicker than we are doing at the moment. However, as Eskom, we will not allow that situation to happen. We will have to find a way around it. But basically, that is what we're asking for a more realistic figure around the diesel. We have also been granted 14.4 billion for IPPs, renewables, for connection and so on. And we have only been allowed 14.4 billion, which we do not have a problem with. The short-term power purchase agreements have not been allowed at all by the regulator in the tariff application. And there is an environmental levy, which is a pass-through to the treasury, which is not really Eskom money, of 0.4%. So if you look at the tariff application, it's 6.8% base application that we are quite happy with, and then some amount of money to deal with the extraordinary circumstances that we find ourselves in that are allowing for load shedding and to mitigate against load shedding, which comes to a decision of 8% that has been allowed for. But when people talk about the 24%, they also include this 4%, which is a clawback from the previous year. So this 4% has got nothing to do with this year. I mean, I read in the paper today that some analysts are saying our 25% application is unrealistic and unnecessary, but I think they are being dishonest because it includes a 4%, which is an application from the previous year, and nobody is pointing this out to South African consumers. This is a clawback from the previous year. It is not part of this year's application. It is money that should have been given to us in the previous year that is being clawed back because the previous year's increase was also understated by about 4.7%. And this has already been given to us. And so this comes to the approved tariff of 12.7% that we have been talking about has been approved and tabled. And I think the municipalities have also tabled it. But it's important to note that of this 12.47%, the real increase from the base is the 6.8% that we have applied for and got, including this money for extraordinary activities of dealing with load shedding, and this 0.4%, which is the environmental levy. And then the 9.5% and the 2.5% that take us to 24% are made up of additional money that we're asking for diesel to deal with load shedding when it happens, and additional money for short-term power purchase agreements, which is 10.9 billion and 5.3 billion. These two amounts, we are only asking for them to mitigate the costs of load shedding. If South Africa is not prepared to put forward an additional 15 billion, and we have to load shed as a result of this, the costs to the economy will be much bigger than this 15 billion. Because this 6.4 billion you're talking about, as I said earlier, 2,000 megawatts. So if we do not have 2,000 megawatts in the grid on any one particular day from diesel to augment our operations, then we immediately move into stage 2 load shedding. And the costs of that are far higher than the 10.9 billion. And so the additional 2.5% is the environmental levy, which may or may not be gazetted by the National Treasury. The National Treasury indicated that they may gazette an environmental levy of 2.5% that Eskom will collect and pass through to the Treasury. So this is not part of our tariff application. However, I'm not sure for what reason or to serve what purposes people are saying in the media that, including in today's papers, that Eskom is asking for 25%, 24% or 25%. But what, in fact, we have asked for is the 6.8%, which has been granted. This is extraordinary measures. This is extraordinary measures. And this is an environmental levy to the Treasury. By the way, this 6.4% and this 3.1%, the regulator will still come and check if this spending of this money was prudent. And if it is found to be prudent, we will get this money anyway in 2 years' time. What we're asking for is for the money to be brought forward rather than Eskom carrying the cost for the next 2 years. And we think this is a more realistic assessment of our diesel expenditure to mitigate load shedding. So even if it is not granted, we're going to go through an exercise and claw it back later. So it is just delaying something that is going to happen. If it is found to have been excessive, the regulator will be able to claw it back from Eskom. And I do not understand why professional analysts and people who profess to know about electricity issues in South Africa are unable to point this out when they make their utterances, their unwelcome utterances in the media. On the issue, and so this is basically our story to the regulator when we're going to do the public hearings. Our story is we're asking for this money, which we will be entitled to 2 years down the line, and we're just asking for it to be brought forward, considering our financial situation, as well as the fact that we would have to lay out this money in cash. By the way, this clawback, even when we got it this year, it comes without interest from the regulator. I don't know if Mongezi or Tava would like to talk about the Duva incident and the fact that it could have been predicted.
The question on Duva, I think the root cause, as explained, that it was actually build-up of fuel within the boiler. I think that summary was correct, as presented by the CE. And the estimate of between 3 billion to 4 billion to rebuild that boiler, that estimate is also correct. We are in the process of a procurement that will firm up the actual cost and will then place the contract for the rebuild. In terms of keeping people accountable, in Eskom and specifically in generation, we have never ran away from keeping people accountable. When an incident happens, our first focus is to recover the plant and get generation going, because that's the primary reason, is to make sure that that piece of plant is busy generating. Then the second objective is to find the root cause that caused that particular incident, so that you can eliminate it in the rest of the fleet, and we may not have similar incidents happening in the rest of the fleet. And then lastly, if in the investigation we do find people being capable, having been found negligent or lack of concentration or whatever the reason may be, we do keep those people accountable for their actions. We do have internal disciplinary processes, and in the past we have kept people accountable. I can give, an example in Letabo when we had an ash build-up and we ended up with exceeding our emissions and losing some capacity. The whole power station management, including the power station manager, were actually disciplined and held accountable for what they have done. So with the Duva incident, similar processes are being followed. We're just not in the process of going public in terms of who have we found guilty and what was the sanction and what have we done. But I would like to assure you that each and every incident is investigated and people held accountable for their actions.
Thank you. The spokesperson has advised me to sit down because it looks like I'm getting moya. Keeping the lights on and doing maintenance appear to be contradictory, but I think it is possible to have them both as objective. It is a mixture of the two. We have to find a point somewhere on the curve of keeping the lights on at all costs and not doing maintenance, or doing maintenance and switching off the lights. There is, I think, a sweet spot somewhere in the middle where you can keep the lights on or have minimum switching off of the lights and do maximum allowable maintenance. It will have to be a give and take between the two objectives, but we think that there is a sweet spot somewhere. It's like if you think of a production possibilities frontier, which has two products or two objectives, along which it is possible to do one or the other, or a mixture of the two. That allows you to meet both objectives. So it is that kind of thinking. If you think of, difference curve analysis and production possibilities about where you are indifferent between combinations of keeping lights on and doing maintenance. So it's not as if we're confronted with a situation that if we keep the lights on, we'll do zero maintenance, or if we do maintenance, we will not have the lights on at all. So we have to find and fine-tune the system to the point where we can do the maximum permissible maintenance while we are keeping the lights on maximally as well. And that is the sort of the juggling act that we have to do. at the moment. So it's not one or the other. I agree they are contradictory, but it's not one or the other. It's a mixture of the two that allows us to have maximum benefit. On whether we are ready to connect new IPP capacity, Teva?
Thank you, Chief Executive. In terms of the IPPs, in terms of bid window 4 that was announced, the areas where those plants were situated, from our preliminary analysis, we wouldn't require a lot of strengthening in terms of joining those plants into the transmission network. The other 13 that was announced the other day, we're still evaluating. But the bottom line is that bid window 4 wasn't in our MYPD 3 window. It was actually going to be in MYPD 4. We've brought that forward. It's part of our tariff application. Obviously, the question about whether we'll be ready or not is dependent on our funding, the capex that we require. But the bigger issue is servitude. We need acquisitions of the servitudes to build those transmission lines and those substations. And what we've seen with bid window 1, 2, and 3, our biggest problem is actually getting the servitudes and acquiring them in order to do the construction work. And that's what's sometimes causing delays. So it's a function of having the capex, the money available to do the strengthening, and ability to acquire the land to build those transmission networks.
And what happened in Mozambique, I think it is a general maintenance problem that we have also in South Africa, but I don't know if Teva, you want to comment on that.
Yes, what happened in Mozambique, normally we get 1,500 megawatts from the Korabasa scheme. On that day, one of the generators tripped at Songo, that's on the Mozambican side, so we dropped to about 1,200 megawatts. And as we were doing operating in order to do some opportunity maintenance on their side, one of the AC breakers on one of the bridges on the Mozambican side, the Songo side, tripped, and it resulted in a cascading effect where it caused a disturbance in the whole bus system, and they lost the whole system, which means it dropped from 1,200 right down to 0. And the question was also asked, can it happen? It did happen previous times. Like the Chief Executive said, it's a function of maintenance. They also have a lot of maintenance to do. They're in the process of doing their maintenance, and they still have a lot of maintenance to do. So the reliability has been much better over the last 10 months compared to the previous time, but they do have these issues where we will sometimes lose it straight from 1,200 down to 0, and sometimes we do lose half the capacity as well. So it was a very unfortunate incident, but the recovery time was fairly quick. We managed to get back to 1,200 megawatts in the space of 5 hours.
And then Mr. Yelland asks, how do we avoid load shedding with an additional 2 gigawatts? Well, Mr. Yelland, what we have presented here is a theoretical exposition of how we can do maintenance without load shedding, which means that we need to identify the maximum amount of space or the maximum amount of power that we can switch off and do maintenance without load shedding or with minimal load shedding. That is a conceptual thing that we need to get over first and foremost. I know that you are innately skeptical, but that is what we're going to try and do and stay within a particular budget. The question that you're asking is, if you have expenditures of 1,200, how can you survive on a budget of 1,000 rand? And people are able to do that because you, firstly, is to recognize that the budget is 1,000 rand. And secondly, is to prioritize expenditures in such a way that at the end of the month, you can stay within the 1,000 budget. Or if you're going to ask for an overdraft, in this case, going above the budget in terms of what is allowable, which means in this instance load shedding, which is either stage 1 or stage 2, we can predict it and we can know what it is. Incidentally, Mr. Yelland, I mean, I have been going through your analysts' comments over the last 6 months, and I have studied them thoroughly, and I have not found anything that is constructive and useful that we can use to take the problem forward. So I always take everything you say from now on with not just a pinch of salt, but a whole tablespoon now, because I've been looking for wisdom that I have sadly not found in your comments. I just thought I should communicate that to you. Cost to completion of Medupi. I don't know if you want to comment, Mr. Masango.
Thank you, Chair. The cost to completion to Medupi in terms of the business case, we're still sitting at 105 billion rand, and we're still executing within that. It is a normal exercise that we perform every year to review what is happening in different projects as part of optimization, etc. And if there's a need for us to optimize, we optimize. And some of the reasons is because of the lessons that we've learned on the scope that we've already completed to try and look at the constructability and see whether we can do faster and quicker. Once we have done the review on this business case, if there's a need, then we go back to the board as well as the minister to make sure that we report what we're seeing in terms of our projection. So far where we're sitting at Medupi business case, we're still sitting at 105 billion. We are also aware that there's a question that is being circulating or making some comments that Medupi is going to cost 300 billion rand. We don't know where that comes from, but as we speak now, Medupi business case is sitting at 105 billion rand.
Thank you so much. We're going to take another round of questions. Before the first round, I saw Gia Nicolaides at Swazi, if you can pass it through. And then after Gia, we'll take, I'm going to, maybe for now, I'm going to skip this row and go to the other end. We'll take Sikonati, and then I see Nerissa also there, and Sichaba next to her. So if you can get, the last one would be the lady at the front. So it's Gia and then Sikonati, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Mr. Molefe, I just wanted to find out from you about your future at Eskom. We know you were appointed as an acting CEO for a specific period of time. And I think that it was around about 3 months. And I was just wondering where to from here in terms of your future at Eskom and the leadership of Eskom.
Chair, if you can just take all the questions in one go. Sikonati.
Since Dr. Ngubane wants to talk, I will ask him to update us on the board inquiry that was instituted on March 12. We exactly 3 months down the line, 2 executives down and 2 to go. What's their future? And when is how is the inquiry going, and when is the result expected? Brian, you said you will add an additional 1,000 megawatts to the system. Where are you getting that from? I don't know if it's Thava or Mongez that are going to answer this question. All of a sudden now, Eskom is able to do maintenance without load shedding. What has changed? You guys have been here all this time and we've been subjected to load shedding all of this time. How now, only now can we have maintenance without load shedding? Last question for Brian. Medupi's, the other unit, is only coming a year and a half after the first one has been commissioned. What's happening between then and now? Why is it 18 months and not the usual 8 months, 6 months that we've gotten used to? And of course, can you just give us a whole total, the cost of the whole build program, not only just Medupi? Thank you very much.
Nerissa?
My question was asked.
Okay, Sichaba, next to you.
Mr. Molefe, from your presentation, you give a long-term vision of how you would want Eskom to, to look like, and you've kind of like even embraced the terminology. I mean, you at times come across as an engineer. Does that suggest that you're looking at your stay beyond just the 3 months that you were given?
And the lady at the front.
Carla Kutsie from eNews. Meneer Molefe, ek hoor jy praat mooi Afrikaans. So ek wil vra dat jy asseblief my in Afrikaans 'n bite gee.
Nee, is reg.
Wat is die kans dat SA se ligte heeltemal afgeskakel word? Met ander woorde, dis 'n blackout en ook net die kans vir beerdkrag hierdie winter.
Die kans vir
Beerdkrag. Load shedding.
Oh, beerdkrag. Is that what it's called? Okay, wat was die eerste?
Wat is die kans dat SA se ligte heeltemal afgaan?
Oh, heeltemal afgaan. Okay.
Well, Mr. Molefe, the kans is yone now.
I think I serve at Eskom at the pleasure of the board and the minister, and I will wait further instructions. But maybe the chairman wants to say something.
Thank you. Well, let's first of all look at the situation. Structurally, we are one. We all belong to DPE. So when we had the crisis here, we discussed with the minister about sending the very successful CEO of Transnet to help us deal with the problem. There's nothing stopping a further discussion with the minister on Mr. Molefe's role. Well, I'll leave it at that, but it's an open discussion. And we're aware that his time is coming to an end, so probably these discussions will start fairly soon. In terms of the report, we're having a meeting on the 26th to receive the report from Denton's. The board will consider the report and refer it to the shareholder, and then we will decide whether we're satisfied with the answers, etc. As for the suspended execs, 2 of them have exited on their own will, consensual settlement. There are still discussions with the 3rd, and the 4th one has not indicated yet. I'm not sure if that answers your questions.
No, sir, it doesn't. They were suspended for 3 months. 3 months is over. And they were not personally being investigated. What are the discussions? What is their process now, the 2 people?
Well, they've resigned, and we accepted their resignation. Then there's one who is still consulting her lawyers. We are awaiting the outcome of those consultations. And there's one who has not indicated any intention of resigning, so he will be subjected to an investigation in terms of his knowledge of the state of affairs at Eskom. Dentons will have done that by the 26th when they hand us their report.
So the issue is whether you resign or you get subjected to an investigation yourself?
No, but it was part of the investigation. I mean, my head of office, Ms. Daniels, who's here, is also on the list for the interview. They are picking on all people who can contribute to their findings as to what is wrong with Eskom.
The chairman
so
of
you don't have to resign first. They will decide who they do that.
The chairman of Eskom, Dr. Ngubane, said Eskom is being investigated. You are saying now she, and we all know who she is, consulting her lawyers.
Yes.
The gentleman that has not given an indication of wanting to go will then be subjected to an investigation. That tells me that none of the other 3 have had to respond to any inquiry by Dentons. Is that a precondition for you to go or stay?
No. Dentons has got its own program, right? As I say, by Thursday, they will have interviewed whoever they feel can contribute materially to answers that we seek.
Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd like to answer the question on the 1,000 megawatts, about where the 1,000 megawatts is going to come from. That 1,000 megawatts is, you know, when we have demand, for example, of 32,000, we allow for 1,000 megawatts additional reserve in case there is something that is unexpected that could happen. So when we calculate demand, we add an additional 1,000, which we call a reserve. And that is where that 1,000 megawatts is not a magical number. It's just it's a reserve that we allow. And if I can move on to the next question about why it is now possible to do maintenance without load shedding. In fact, I would like to answer this question. I think that we have an extremely competent executive at Eskom. If you had been paying attention to my presentation, you would have seen that I said that at the beginning of the year, the projections for maintenance were actually extremely conservative and indicated that for most of the first half of the year, we would have load shedding, most of the time stage 3 and sometimes stage 2. But in fact, what turned out is that even before my arrival, there was electricity available a lot of the days in the first half of the year from January to April were actually green, which means that there was no load shedding. So maybe perhaps the strategy of and maintenance was done during that period. So perhaps the maintenance without load shedding may not have been articulated as it should have been, but in fact that is a continuation of a strategy that has been there implicitly and that has resulted in us performing better than how we have performed. How we were projecting to perform in the first half of the year. So those numbers speak for themselves, and that was before my arrival, and that is why I consider myself extremely privileged to join a group as competent as the current executives of Eskom.
Well, I can just add that Brian is being modest. He managed, through his leadership, to create a synergy between Tava and Mongesi. That is what has resulted in the change. It is creating that synergy that has been able to bring about.
Thank you, Chair.
Sikonati, if you can just avoid maybe to have a dialogue. If you have any specific questions to the chair, then after the session, then we can facilitate that one.
The question, sir, is I'd like Dr. Ngubane to finish answering the question about the investigation that he was interrupted.
I have. If someone chooses to resign, then you have no basis to pull them in for an interview. This is what has happened. It wasn't a precondition at all.
Thank you, Chair. I think we'll move on to another set of questions. CE.
And there was a question about Medupi and Kusile. Abraham, I don't know if you want to take it.
Yes, Chief. In actual fact, as I indicated earlier on, that there's a continuous optimization in our construction. Your calculation is correct. Medupi 5 is projected to come in 18 months, but there's a lot of effort that is going on to make sure that is it possible for us to bring it earlier than that. I must also report that in actual fact, the past weekend, it was a good weekend for Eskom because in both projects, we've achieved the big milestones. On Kusile 1, we've done the super hydro test successfully. I mean, 40,000 welders with one leak. I think that in terms of the standard of the weld practice, that was the best. At Medupi, the reheater has also undergone a hydro test the past weekend without any failure. So that is an indication that the lessons that we've learned on Medupi 6 is helping us, and that it means if there's no repair, we are able to, gradually claw back the schedule. And that is a continuous effort that are put by the men and the women who are working day and night in those projects. So we are very confident that in that 18 months, if there's nothing unforeseen, like, sometimes you've got a very, very bad weather where you cannot be able to work. If those things are not hindering us, we will be able to claw back and make sure that that unit is placed on load as quick as possible.
Yeah, there was a question about my being an engineer. Yes, that was before. But the guy is gone.
No, he's still here. Sechaba.
Now he's gone.
He's here, yeah.
Oh. Sechaba, just to keep you to make you feel at ease. I did not train as an engineer.
Let me answer that. Being a CEO of any company, it means that you have a broad view of the work being done in that company. Same thing with training. You don't have to be an engineer to make
Best two at it.
Same thing with this. But in his case, he's getting an honorary doctorate in engineering from a London university, from Glasgow.
Ek moet sê, ek was nie bewus dat die taalbond het alreeds 'n load-shedding woord vir in Afrikaans. Ek het gedink die taalbond ja, daar gaan minimum load-shedding wees in hierdie winter en daar is nie 'n kans dat Suid-Afrika in 'n totale afgaansituasie met ons ligte sal kan dit is van waar ek sit dink ek nie dit is moontlik dat ons ligte heeltemal af gaan wees op een of ander tyd in die toekoms. Ek dink nie so. En ek wil vir Suid-Afrika sê ons dink ons het die bestuur van Eskom is nou onder 'n goeie bestuur met die executive committee wat ons nou hier ek moet nou uitvoerende ja nee ek moet nou jammer sê vir die anglisismes wat ek nou ingooi maar dis die situasie ons dink nie die ligte gaan afgaan dit is nie moontlik dat dit sal gebeur maar die load shedding sal ons moet nog bietjie hier en daar load shedding dat sal moet bietjie hier en daar load shedding wees maar ons sal probeer om dit bitter min te maak. Dankie.
Well, baie dankie meneer Molefe. We're going to take another round of questions. This time we're going to check if we have any people joining us on the chorus line.
Thank you. We have two questions. The first coming from Ross Krieger. Please go ahead, Ross.
Hi, good afternoon all. Ross Krieger from JP Morgan Equity Research. Just wondering if you could give us an update on progress around the carbon tax, what further engagement there's been with government on that, if you know when it's going to happen and what impact it may or may not have on prices. Thanks.
Thank you, Ross. The next question is from Sue McLennan. Sue, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm phoning from Grocotts Mail in Grahamstown. My question is this. There were 20 indebted municipalities that were earlier listed as being in danger of having their electricity supply cut off, and payment plans were then made, and that was allayed. I would like to confirm, please, if you can, that the payment plan submitted by Makana municipality specifically has been approved, and that Makana municipality's electricity supply is safe and secure.
Thank you. And our final question from the teleconference comes from Nicolette Pombo van Sail. Please go ahead, Nicolette.
Thank you. I'd like to find out about the energy war room. It was instigated at the end of last year, and what is the contribution to alleviating load shedding to date between Eskom and this war room?
Right. Thank you so much. I'm going to take at least 3 more questions from the floor. I'm afraid our chair and the CE have other meetings to attend to. So I'm going to take people who have never asked any questions. So I'm going to go with, you come right at the back.
Okay, it's Penal Lemon from the Times. There's a question that hasn't been answered. We got a cost to completion for Medupi, but we didn't get the rest. So it hasn't been addressed. Can we get some information on that?
And then the lady next to Chris Yelland.
Candice Cupido, Business Day TV. I want to go back to the beginning of your presentation. What does that 96% refer to? Is it users? Is it industrial users? And then also, does it include the cutbacks by the industrial users? The last question for that is, how much power is actually available to industrial users at this time?
Next to Chris.
Hi, it's Tina Weaver and I'm freelance. I just wanted to find out if the heavy industry, the ferrochrome smelters and the aluminium smelters, how badly are they being affected at the moment? And yeah, that's essentially what I want to find out. Are they still doing the 10% cutbacks, and how often is that happening?
And sorry, Mr. Malefe, this is the last one, the lady at the second round.
Hi, guys. Melanie Prinsloo from Sunday Times. I have a couple of questions. The one question is on, can you please tell us why it's for Brian, sorry. Brian, why did you decide not to renew Microsoft's contract, and what did you learn from that report that he gave you? How big was that report? And then yesterday, a very upset contractor from Medupi phoned me and told me he hasn't been paid for 3 months. Can you please comment on that?
Who was this?
It was a contractor, his name is Dimitri, but I cannot give you too much detail on that.
Oh, Dimitri says he wasn't paid. Oh, we'll investigate it. Dimitri who?
I'll give you his details after this.
No, but there's no point in asking us very publicly that somebody was not paid and not give us the details. It's unfair.
Yeah, well, it's Dimitri Vitalides.
Dimitri who?
Vitalides.
Vitalides?
Yeah.
Which company is it?
So it is a construction company.
Which one? Look,
I can't give you that now. I'll give it to you. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to Kulu.
If you're going to raise issues like that,
then you don't have to answer that now. Then I'll send the question to Kulu.
In the way that you have done, I mean, you must be able to come up with it. It's only fair that we know what you're talking about, so we can answer intelligently.
Okay, no, that's fair. Just the last question.
But we will be in touch with Dimitri Vitalis to find out what his issue is.
So, a last question is about when those executives were first suspended. I was told that Mr. Koko will come back definitely, and that was just a red herring that was thrown in there. And so it confuses me how someone would have that sort of foresight, which means that a lot of this could have been planned. What is your, maybe for Ben?
So who said Mr. Koko will come back?
That is a confidential source, but
You see now. Well,
I cannot now
Were you
say
at the
on air.
Shebeen? Were you at the...
No, it's a
in
good
Melville,
source.
in a
It's a good
restaurant?
source.
Or was it a formal correspondence?
It
Or in
was-
church?
No.
And what were the circumstances
It
of
was
such an utterance?
it's an Eskom exec that left just before the execs left.
Oh, so it was another Eskom executive?
Employee that left just before them.
Sorry, let's just put a stop to this type of speculative questioning. Any of the suspended people would have come back at the end of the suspension, which was 3 months. Some chose to, enter into discussions. Koko did not. So I've said publicly he'll be interviewed because of his knowledge in the sector he was. So the talk that he will come back is really meaningless and irresponsible, because anyone could have come back depending on, what happens. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear. Did you say Sunday Times or Sunday Sun?
Yeah, so business times, but I feel that if someone knows that 3 months before and they told that to me, doesn't that mean that there's a lot going on behind the scenes? I feel that that is the case. But from Sunday Sun, also can you answer that in all our official languages? No, but okay, so just answer, maybe start with Mike Rousseau.
Thank you, CE.
Okay. On the carbon tax,
Chief Executive, we already made a submission around Eskom's views around the carbon tax, especially the punitive measure that it would bring to us. And the commission that's busy with it is now busy finalizing their report. So like other major industries, it has a big impact on our company. And obviously the cost that's associated with the carbon tax will obviously have an impact on the tariff. And that's our biggest argument. So we're not sure exactly when it's going to be imposed and when it will be coming along. But certainly, I think National Treasury is still considering all the submissions, and we're waiting for a decision. Probably next financial year, certainly not this financial year.
the indebted municipalities?
So I must start off. I can't give you the specific around the municipality that the person mentioned. There's a lot of agreements that we sign. But what I can tell you that is among the top 20 that were defaulting, like we had communicated, 18 had signed agreements with us and payment plans. And the one that you had mentioned is not one of the two that had not signed. The two that have not signed is under a legal process at this stage. One is that the judge is going to make a ruling on the court application brought by the Munich on the 18th of June, and then we'll wait that court application and follow our process. The other one, the judge has actually reserved judgment around the issue, and he will make his ruling in 2 weeks' time, and we'll wait for that. The other 18 have payment plans. Of the 18, 2 had defaulted on the payment plans, and we had followed our process in terms of disconnection. But before the disconnection date, those 2 had met their payment plans in terms of paying us what is their current account plus the portion of the debt that they're owing. So unfortunately, I can't remember the name that you mentioned, exactly the name, but if they're not among, I can tell you for sure that they're not among the 2 that have defaulted on their payment plan, or the 2 that have not signed payment agreements with us.
On the question of the war room led by the Deputy President, the war room has been extremely useful to Eskom. In fact, has unlocked a lot of log jams and bureaucratic problems in government, and in fact continues to do so. The war room continues to meet every Friday, and what happens at the war room is that we present as management on behalf of the board all the issues that we require to be considered by government broadly, and the areas in which government departments and government can assist. They also inspect our plans and make an input into our plans, and pass a help us to think through what we are trying to do. So in that sense, I think for me personally, the war room has been extremely useful. They have done a lot of work since the war room was established about 6 months ago, and they continue to contribute quite positively to the problems that we have. In fact, it is in considering a lot of the recommendations that have been made by people in the war room and the war room itself that we are arriving at a situation where we can in fact now articulate a strategy that is going to take us through winter and that is going to help us to catch up with the maintenance backlog. The war room has been extremely useful to Eskom over the last 6 months and continues to play a very positive role. Cost to completion of Medupi, I don't know, Abraham, if you want to talk about that.
Look, in terms of the entire build, the total cost for this project is 265 billion, plus minus. But I must indicate that most of the people, when they talk about the new build, they just concentrate on the flagship projects, which is Medupi and Kusile. There's a lot of other projects that are being carried out. The projects like Ingula, which is costing us 25.9 billion. We've got a lot of projects on the transmission lines. We've got a lot of projects on the refurbishment that we're doing. We're doing Majuba Rail, etc. So there's a lot of other projects that are going on as we speak, and all of them are catered within the 265 billion. I must also indicate that there's a lot of progress on our flagship projects. For example, I've mentioned Ingula. If you look at Ingula, we've spent to date, inception to date, 23 billion. That project, we expect it to finish like next year. We're working very hard to make sure that we finish it. If you look at Kusile, inception to date, we've spent 80 billion. If you look at Medupi, inception to date, we've spent 85 billion. So the 265 billion, it covers all the projects that we're currently doing within Eskom.
Diva, can you deal with the 96% availability of electricity as well as the impact on heavy industries?
Thank you, Chief Executive. The 96% is basically for everyone. When we do stage one rotational load shedding, we also do what we call stage one load curtailment, where our key industrial customers will also reduce a further 10%. So when we say 96% available, then basically it's to everyone, commercial, industrial, and domestic. The question around the heavy ferrochrome smelters and the effect of load shedding and the 10% reduction, you must remember the 10% reduction came around 2008 when we had load shedding. We asked all the heavy industries to reduce 10%. So majority of them have actually carried through with that with that 10% reduction, and they basically have continued with that, and they've actually built in efficiencies where they've managed to reduce their consumption and still function with that 10% reduction. The impact of the ferrochrome industries and the impact load shedding has on them, it's not like we cut off supply to them days on end. The ferrochrome industry, like any other industry, like the aluminium industry, is going through a very difficult time. It is not a function of load shedding impacting on their performance. You must remember that the commodity prices are very low. Ferrochrome prices and aluminium prices is probably at the lowest it's been for a long time. So those industries that are cutting back is not cutting back as a result of load shedding. They're cutting back due to commodity prices that are very low. They look at the price of electricity, they look at the prices, and they work out whether it's sustainable to continue or not.
On Microsoft's contract, Microsoft's contract came to an end, and it was not renewed. That's all there is to say about the matter, because I do not know if you're trying to imply by your question if there was, whether you're demanding that it should have been renewed, or whether Microsoft is demanding that it should. But the contract came to an end. When a contract comes to an end, it can either be renewed or not. And in this instance, it was not. And that is the end of the matter. The reports that he has written while he was a contractor are appreciated, and we have them on file. Yeah, that's all I can say about the matter. The contract was not renewed. On Dimitri Vitalides, we will find out exactly what his company is and the reasons why he was not paid. Has he offered any reasons why he may not have been paid? Just out of interest, because sometimes people say they were not paid and so on, and when you go and investigate, you find out that in fact there is something that has caused for the funds to be withheld. I don't know if he indicated that to you, but if he hasn't, we will investigate it. Perhaps when we find out why he was not paid, or the things that he did for him not to be paid, and the name of his company, maybe we'll just issue a press statement or not. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Colin Kreivagen from the Shareholding Ministry, the DPE, and also thank the board and the executive team that is here, and also yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to be with us here. This concludes the formal proceedings. There will be a session for one-on-ones immediately after this, but the sitting is formally adjourned.